Hello, I'm Helen Fu. Welcome to Health Factor with Helen Fu. We all want to be understood and communicate our ideas effectively. Have you thought of what it takes to do this? Does the idea of making a presentation leave you with sweaty palms? What if you speak with an accent? Phyllis Thesier is a U.S. nationally certified speech and communication coach, working with professionals, executives, and their teams to be able to effectively communicate their ideas. Her areas of expertise are with accents, voice, and presentations. She works in Massachusetts, New Jersey, and China, with her main office in Wisconsin. Welcome to the show, Phyllis.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you so much for having me.
So tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get into accent management?
Essentially, it started with Toastmasters, Toastmasters International. My father was a Toastmaster. He'd been an avid Toastmaster and learned about it as a young, struggling professional trying to communicate his message. And when I was a little girl, I went to several meetings and learned about all these people making presentations. Then when I was at the university, majoring in neuroscience, my father asked me to come down and visit his club again. And he said, we have these people here from, great PhDs, they're from all over the world, and they're in our little Toastmasters club, and nobody understands them. And they've come to Toastmasters. How can I help them? Can you go back up to the university and find out what I can do to help them? I ended up in linguistics, then over in the speech and communication sciences building. And with my fascination with what it takes to think, I found out that thinking is essentially brought about by communication.
Uh-huh.
And if what we think isn't effectively communicated, then our thoughts and our brilliance aren't effectively communicated. So I changed my major to speech and communication science and then went ahead and got my bachelor's and my master's degree in it.
That's a fascinating story. What a gift your father gave.
Yes.
Just to bring you to Toastmasters.
Right.
Yeah, I'm a Toastmaster also. I highly recommend it. Yeah, it's a great club.
Right.
Yeah.
With my opportunity, I've had an opportunity to be a Toastmaster in many states, and there's many different types of clubs. And I've learned from each and every experience I've had in different Toastmasters. I had to look to find different ones that fed the need of what they were teaching the communication. Yet I've learned from anywhere from Utah to Indiana to Kentucky to Massachusetts, New Jersey, and even in China. I learned so much from every Toastmasters club that I belong to.
So for our audience who really don't know a whole lot about Toastmasters, you want to tell us a little bit about the organization?
The organization, Toastmasters organization, is 80 years old or more. And it was started by many sales professionals who were helping other sales professionals to be able to make good presentations, to be more successful. And as they helped each other, then some other sales would move to another area and they'd start something on their own. And pretty soon it became more standardized. They started developing more manuals. And their home offices are now in California. They've been there for a long time. And the whole idea is members helping members. Mm-hmm. They give you the ideas, the expertise, the methods and strategies, yet members then bring in some of their own expertise and they bring in their own strategies. Some clubs are there to help you find it's made of small business people. Sometimes you find many clubs and corporations.
Uh-huh. That's right.
Because you have brilliant people just not able to organize their thoughts in a meeting or organize their thoughts to make a good presentation. And this is very critical anymore, especially in an age when we are using video conferencing and teleconferencing to be able to effectively communicate your ideas, sometimes in less than 30 seconds. And that's hard to do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fascinating organization. I know that in Toastmasters, there are like 2 tracks.
Yes.
the public speaking skills track and also the leadership skills track. So you can really learn how to be a better speaker or a better leader.
Right. And being a better leader is knowing how to effectively communicate what you want with the audience and making for certain the audience is receptive to that.
That's true.
So it's truly about knowing your audience and how they will respond to what you communicate.
So what you do is to help people to be a better speaker and a better communicator
Correct.
through accent management as well as
My
speaking
focus
skills.
has been many times, I have clients from all over the world, and I even have clients from, the US. I've had attorneys, I've had finance people, I've had engineers, technology, science specialists, and their whole goal is to be able to communicate effectively so that they can advance in their careers. And one of those things that it comes about doing this, sometimes it's an accent, sometimes it can be their voice is too soft, sometimes their voice is too rough, sometimes they may sound like the Godfather. And essentially, they know that their audience is not receiving them well, and they are tired of the miscommunications, the missed opportunities, the missed target dates, the missed deadlines. And because people keep coming back, what'd he say? Well, I didn't get it. I didn't understand you the first time. Knowing how to use your voice effectively, knowing how to speak so that the other, with an accent that most people will understand, your target audience will understand. To give you an example, my first accent is hillbilly, and I grew up talking like this. And I found out after a while that outside of my little area that people just didn't understand that.
Is that more like a Southern accent?
That's, well, they call it the Hoosier accent. The Hoosier down, it's kind of mixture between Kentucky and Southern Point Township. I've had some of the other folks calling it, that's down in the, in the gutter level of Point Township and down in the deep sand backwoods. And yet I spoke like this. This was what was in my school. This was how so many other people spoke. And yet I had aunts who didn't speak like this. They had gone to a different school than I had. So I had to try to discern. I worked on trying to discern on changing my own accent while I was at the university. And I worked on changing my own accent and changing it based upon the communication I had to do with different people.
In that case, I guess accent management is not just an issue for foreigners.
Right.
For Americans as well.
Yes. Yes. There's been people that, well, to give you an example, I had a human resource person call me up one time and say, we really have this person who is brilliant, has several PhDs, has several patents, and however, he's not communicating well with the CEO, with upper management. And I said, well, what's he doing? Well, he steps out in front of the CEO, gets in the car ahead of the CEO, happens to interrupt the CEO, and I'm going, okay, what else? Tell me this person's background. I'm thinking, what backcultural, background does this? And she kept on telling me everything else. The communication talks too fast. Nobody understands him. And this type of thing. I finally said, where is he from? She said, Michigan. And she kept talking. And I said, but where in Michigan? I know he went to school at the University of Michigan and MIT, but where was he born? She said, Michigan. I said, so tell me more about this person. And the person had a perfectly good accent. He had a grating voice. He talked way too fast. And he couldn't register how he was being perceived. So I collaborated with an executive coach, and I worked on the voicing. The executive coach worked on the behaviors that are expected of a professional within upper management. And together, this gentleman is now very successful.
Wow, interesting. So it's not just about accent. It's more about public speaking skills and communication skills and how to help people to understand you better.
Right, right. I feel very comfortable collaborating with executive coaches as they understand there's a nuanced set of behaviors, set of communication. Many times we walk into a room and we've already communicated who we are before we even open our mouth.
That's true.
And in our body language, so many people tout the Albert Mehrabian numbers of communication is 54% body language and 38% vocal, and then the 7% is only words. That's taking it way out of context. There is a lot of visual that comes into it. How we dress, how we stand, how we walk into a room, how we come into a meeting. Another client I had was a brilliant gentleman from one of the countries in Africa. Again, several PhDs, had somewhat of a British accent. He was pretty well understood. However, his body language shouted disorganization, shouted that he didn't understand what he needed to be doing, because he would come into a room carrying loads of books, hunched down, looking very harried, and then speak at the speed of light. And then people would say, he doesn't really know what he's talking about. And that was that perception. Yes, he did know what he was talking about. Yet the initial perception was the body language.
Okay, interesting.
Even though he had somewhat of a British accent. So we had to work on the initial part, work on the speaking speed, work on the vocalizations when he paused, how to craft his message so that he didn't really understanding his audience.
What kind of trainings do you need in order to do what you're doing?
My background is that I was trained in speech and communication science, and then my master's is in speech pathology. I studied all the what happens in the brain, and to receive language, to understand language, what else is going on. And then I studied all the science of the mechanics, the muscles, and everything else to make speech happen. So I understand the different accents, what's happening when, say, like somebody from China, they struggle with saying the long A. And they struggle, especially if an N is following it, or struggle with the long E sounds, especially if an N is following it, because their N is made with the middle part of their tongue in the middle part of their mouth. While the E sounds and the long A sounds and the long I sounds all use that middle part. When the tongue's fighting to get to the N, it'll drop part of that long sound. And they'll say manly versus mainly. They'll say manly versus mindly. They won't say that part as that they have to fight it. Whereas an American N, a North American N, and a British N is made with a tongue tip. Is made right up here on this part, more towards the front of the mouth. That leaves the middle part of the tongue to get to that long E sound, that A, I sound. And that's what helps. The L is the same thing, is made up here.
I can totally relate to that.
Yes.
Especially if the L sound is in the middle.
Right. And those rule systems vary, the sound systems and rule systems vary across languages, and the mechanics I understand between that helps me to help my clients better. However, saying that, I know some phenomenal ESL professionals who have specialized in accents, and they have a master's degree, they have the certifications in training in accents, and so they're excellent teachers and accent coaches as well. So you want to look for somebody with a certification of some sort in this area.
An expert in the area.
Right.
Who are your clients? How do they find you?
Grand majority of my clients are executives, or corporate professionals, business professionals, and about half and half, are their executive managers who are calling and saying, we have a team member that we value very much so. They're just not being understood. They're not able to effectively communicate their brilliance. We get people saying, I didn't understand, please send me an email. What is in the email is not essentially everything the person needed to say. And so there's missed deadlines and miscommunications and missed financial targets. They want this valuable person to be able to, again, communicate their brilliance. The other one comes from people who are executives who they know that they're not at the level where they want to be. Their profession, their business isn't at a level where they want to be. And so then they seek me out hunting for some ideas, and how can I help get myself better?
Your clients usually, do you work with them on an individual basis or you do group workshops? How does it work?
I do both. There are clients that want to be seen just individually, and I have 3 levels. I have a basic, mastery, and what I call the ACE programs. In each one of those levels, I have built-in small group or built-in individual face-to-face with some distance coaching. And then I have small group where I target on, say I have a company that says, okay, we need help just in crafting our message. And how do we craft a message for our teleconferences to make for certain, that our messages are understood by our target audience? So I do a combination of small group classes, etc. My most recommended, most requested one usually is the middle of the road, the mastery level. And with the mastery level, sometimes I'll do a face-to-face for several hours. That way we get an idea of, a lot of people really resonate with that, with the face-to-face. They need that. And then we do Skype coaching or Google Hangout coaching or sometimes just telephone coaching. This came about because a lot of my clients travel. And I have a training code, a behavioral training code that I gauge how they're doing, and I could see the fine differences between everybody that was face-to-face, those people who were all distance coaching, and then those people who were the combination. And the people who were the combination were somewhere between 27 and 30% greater gains on the same subject matter than just total distance coaching or total face-to-face.
Your clients are from all over the world.
Right.
I know you recently traveled to China.
Yeah.
Tell us about how, when you travel to different countries, how do you work with the people there? Do you teach seminars? Do you do workshops?
My recent trip to China, I did workshops with the Shanghai Toastmasters clubs. There's probably in the Shanghai province, probably 80 some odd Toastmasters clubs. And I did an afternoon workshop on helping Toastmasters, how they can help their members with accents. And I have a specialized program for that. When I did a couple of other small workshops. However, I go into corporations. I've gone into corporations when I was in China living there, doing small workshops and doing individual and group coaching. It just depended upon what they needed for me to do.
If you have 3 tips for somebody who wants to be a better speaker or a better communicator, what would they be?
If you want to do it as well as you can to the best combination, is number 1, open up your mind to seek out a Toastmasters club. Because changing how we speak requires other people monitoring us. If we have an outside trusted monitor who speaks the target way that we want to speak, then we will constantly we will be monitoring ourselves as well. Trying to do it on your own is just not advisable. We are not good monitors. When I want to monitor my health, I go to a health coach because a health coach helps me to say, Phyllis, you're fooling yourself. And this is what I seek out. I seek out somebody to actually help me. The next thing is, again, you've gone to Toastmasters someplace to practice, then you seek out a specific training coach to help you with your speaking. So you seek out somebody with the expertise, with certifications, seek out somebody who has, who you feel comfortable with, and then call up several people. You know, find out if they're truly interested in you. Find out if they want to know more of what your goals are, because that individual will then help you get to where you're going.
Do you have any success stories you want to tell us from your clients who choose to work with you and then got really good results?
Oh, quite a few. There's essentially, when I first started working with some of these were college professors, young college professors. And they, you know, in their zeal to be, you know, the college professor, they were speaking at rapid fire paces and not being understood and not understanding why the students weren't doing well. They tried passing out all the information, etc. And it's still, their passion was not communicated because they weren't understood. In working with one gentleman, I didn't know until almost 10 years later that I thought, oh, he's really not paying attention to this. He really thinks if he speaks faster, he'll get more information out. He, you know, and I worked with him on his pace and on how to pause so people could understand, and giving him those strategies, and then how to get into a Toastmasters. And he told me when I came back, you know, to the university, I'd met it, he says, you targeted me to pause. You taught me how to pause. And I didn't believe you until I joined a Toastmaster several years after. And he said, all of a sudden it occurred to me that maybe my teacher was right. And he was now moving into a position to be chair of his department.
Wow.
So that was, you know, as a young coach, as a young speech and communication coach for them, I thought, oh, I really did make a difference then. I needed the feedback then. When I've worked with several other folks, I have found that, you know, they have gone from individual contributors, you know, people from China. This gentleman I was telling you about that, you know, used his body language. His speech was somewhat of a British accent, however, he talked too fast, and his body language, you know, he is now an expert that's requested to be a speaker all over the world now. You know, some of the others were, you know, a young man who had cerebral palsy, but was brilliant and couldn't be understood. And working with him and teaching him how to pause, and teaching him how to ask other people to contribute, and teaching him how to include his audience, it took some of the stress off him. And yet he learned how to talk slower, not fight himself, and he became very effective. And he's an American. You know, the attorney who spoke like the Godfather, he stopped losing his voice. And he was able to go from an individual contributor to a very successful private practice. You know, all of these are just being able to effectively communicate your brilliance and its effectiveness, you know, knowing those strategies of how to do that.
How do people get your information? Do you have a website? Do they call you or email you?
A lot of folks find me from my website. They will, because I practice in Massachusetts and and have a lot of clients in China as well as other countries, they'll find me on my website. It's www.accent, then mgtgroup.com. speach.com. It stands for Accent Management Group. Or people, if they've heard about me, as long as you type in Phyllis Thesier on Google, it's Thesier, you can find me because I'm the only one that exists.
The only Phyllis Thesier.
The only Phyllis Thesier.
Interesting. Well, thank you so much for coming to the show. It's a lot of fun talking to you. And you've been a Toastmaster for a long time, right?
Correct.
How many years?
Oh, wow. Well over 25. If I go back to age 4, a lot.
Fascinating. We are so delighted to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you having me here. I'm very delighted to be on the show. It's again, when you talk about your health focus, when we feel comfortable with how we're communicating, we feel vibrant and healthy.
Absolutely.
So
I'm looking forward to seeing you again in the Toastmasters meetings.
good. I'll see you there.
Yes. You've probably heard the saying, the number one fear for most people is public speaking. Do you know that the number 2 fear is to be burned alive? Which means most people would rather to be burned alive than to give a public speech. Actually, the problem is not about the speaking, it's about the public embarrassment, the worries about how to make people understand them. If you learn how to speak better, how to communicate better, then you won't have the fear anymore. Thank you for watching the show. Stay healthy. See you next time.